For Omer Shemtov's family and friends, today was Liberation Day. 16 months of pain endured by Omer's sister turning into joy. Every hostage release, every scene like this one, proving this ceasefire's worth. Though whether it continues beyond next week is anyone's guess. Omer was among 6 released by Hamas in Gaza this morning. The 6 are the last living hostages to be returned in this ceasefire's first phase. The 22-year-old was paraded on stage. He'd been kidnapped from a music festival, and yet remarkably, he kissed 2 of the men who had been holding him. His homecoming was broadcast on Israeli television, and it will be one of the last unless the ceasefire becomes permanent, though the original plan requires a complete Israeli withdrawal. But Israel is still grieving, in no mood to forgive or forget, and still angry at the deaths of Shiri Bibas and her 2 young children. Hamas handed over Shiri's remains yesterday after delivering the wrong corpse the day before. For all today's celebrations, Israel's Prime Minister has not committed to that second phase of withdrawing troops. Doing so might well lead to the collapse of his coalition government. So imagine how scenes like these look to the families of the 30 or so hostages who are alive and still missing, wondering if the war is about to resume, denying them this moment.
That's why we all need to push for having the phase 2. There is more than dozens of young men that are waiting to be released. We know our son, Idan, is alive and is waiting to be released. I'm just hoping that he's staying strong and surviving, and his day will come.
These men are thinking even further ahead. The Saudi Crown Prince and his fellow Arab leaders met yesterday. They know that oil money is likely to foot the bill for Gaza's reconstruction. And that's the price to be paid for stopping Donald Trump from turning it into real estate. The president was himself talking to the Saudis in Florida on Wednesday, along with his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and Steve Witkoff, the property developer now tasked with securing further hostage releases.
The issue with phase 2 is that there's supposed to be an end to the war as part of phase 2. And I think the Israelis have a red line, which is you can't have Hamas in the government. And so it's hard to sort of square that circle. But we're making a lot of progress in the conversations, and hopefully it will lead to some good things, good results.
And images of these Hamas fighters today will enrage many Israelis. If there wasn't a ceasefire, they would be targeted by Israeli fighter jets. So perhaps it's no surprise that amid such anger, Israel's delayed the release of hundreds of Palestinian detainees. As for whether Hamas really will step down from power, well, it may be the Saudis and the Egyptians who give them no choice in return for rebuilding this. And then, maybe only then, will this current round of conflict end.
Jonathan Rugman reporting there. Now, I'm joined in the studio by Nomi Bar-Yacoub, who's an international peace negotiator at the Geneva Centre for Security Policy, and she specialises in conflict management. Nomi, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
Let us assume for a moment that the delay is symbolic rather than substantive. Bring us up to speed with discussions around phase 2.
Well, they're always symbolic and substantive. I mean, they're sort of flip side of the same coin. So I'd say there's a bit of both.
Right.
And I think we're also at the stage where Israel's very upset just to address the delay with the way that 3 of the bodies were treated. The bodies that 3 returned in the last 24 hours. The body of Shiri Bibas, the mother of the baby, and the 4-year-old.
So it may be a reaction to the fact that the wrong body was
the wrong body.
Right.
That was remedied, but also Israel's requested now a Security Council meeting on this particular issue Monday or Tuesday to discuss how to proceed. So that ties into the delay and ties into phase 2. Sort of everything is sort of interwoven here. And reportedly the UK and the US are backing the Israeli request for a Security Council meeting on this issue.
Right. Concerns about it not taking place at all. Are you worried? The progress to phase 2?
Well, I am cautiously optimistic, personally. I think that the push is very serious, both from the US. We've just heard in Jonathan Rugman's report, excellent report, that Steve Witkoff was saying they're making progress and they're working on it. It's very clear that President Trump and Witkoff are very keen to ensure that there won't be a resumption of fighting. That is not in their interest. It is also clear that the vast majority of the Israeli public, except for a small minority which is in power, the extreme government, also interested in ensuring that all hostages are returned. There are currently 63 hostages. That is a process, and that will entail an end of war. So I think, yes, I think we will see a resumption. Netanyahu is going to make it look like it's so difficult for him, and he's making so many concessions, and it's not going to be smooth.
Yeah.
But I think eventually we are going to see the hostages return and the Israeli army withdraw. But it's going to come, you know, there will be benchmarks and there will be arguments and there will be hurdles and hitches. Not a smooth process, but we're heading in the right direction.
But if we put this in the context, we heard Witkoff talking about squaring the circle. There are some mutually exclusive issues here, right? Netanyahu says the fighting has to continue until Hamas are vanquished, and Hamas are determined, as we see in the pictures of the release, they are saying we are still here.
Well, they're saying we are still here. What I didn't get around to mentioning, just time factor, is that the Arab states, 6 Arab nations met in Riyadh yesterday. There is going to be a big Arab summit led by Egypt on the 4th of March. And they're coming out with a counter plan to Trump's, and they're coming up with a who is going to govern Gaza detailed plan. And Hamas stated today, at least on the record to Al Jazeera, I heard Bassem Naim state in English that they are in agreement with the Egyptian plan and they're willing to relinquish control in line with that plan. So they also said that they're willing to release all the hostages in one go. So that will be 59 hostages after the 4 are released. So the pressure is on from Hamas, from the Arab states that are coming out for the first time in a united
Do you think some of that may be actually a reaction to Trump's Gaza-Ilago plan, that they've been bumped into offering something?
Without a shadow of doubt. I think it was part of the strategy. I think that is exactly what it is. I don't think I know.
We are sadly about to be out of time, but last thoughts on what we are likely to hear out of the Security Council meeting tonight.
You mean the Israeli Security Cabinet?
Yep.
Well, the Israeli Security Cabinet, I think you will hear a very, very tough stance, and that they're not going to give up. And, this is a right-wing government. Netanyahu will be playing to his local audience. And he
has to keep them on side.
Well, he may lose it, but we need to keep that in mind when we hear him, that he's talking principally to his audience, to his government, not necessarily to his supporters within the government.
Nomi Bar Yaakov, thank you so much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you, Kami, for having me.